Substance-related disorders involve the abuse of psychoactive substances, with wide-ranging physiological, psychological, and behavioral effects. Substance-related disorders involve the abuse of psychoactive substances, with wide-ranging physiological, psychological, and behavioral effects. These disorders are associated with impairment and come at a high personal and social cost. Substance-related disorders have undergone important revisions in the DSM-5 and now cover 4 classes: depressants, stimulants, opiates, and hallucinogens. Psychosocial factors interact with biological influences, while most substances activate the dopaminergic pleasure pathway. This module will mainly cover substance-related disorders. However, non-substance disorders related to addiction and impulse control disorders will also be covered. Let's examine non-substance disorders and impulse control disorders in more detail. Non-substance disorders. Gambling disorder is new in the DSM-5 and involves recurrent gambling, leading to clinically significant distress and impairment. Research is limited in the area of gambling disorder. Impulse control disorders. Impulse control disorders include intermittent explosive disorder, i.e. frequent aggressive outbursts, kleptomania, i.e. urge to steal unnecessary items, and pyromania, i.e. an irresistible urge to set fires. Research is limited in the area of impulse control disorders. It is important to define terms and distinctions related to substance disorders. Substance use. Substance use is defined as taking moderate amounts of a substance in a way that does not interfere with functioning. Substance use is associated with substance intoxication that involves a physical reaction to a substance, for example, being drunk. Substance abuse. Substance abuse is use of a substance in a way that is dangerous or causes substantial impairment that affects one's job, career, or relationships. Substance dependence. Substance dependence can be defined by tolerance and withdrawal, sometimes defined by drug-seeking behavior. Tolerance involves needing more of a substance to get the same effect, while withdrawal includes a physical symptom reaction when a substance is discontinued after regular use. Substance use disorders involve a pattern of substance use that leads to significant impairment and distress. Symptoms generally include tolerance, withdrawal, role disruption, interpersonal problems, and reduction of other important activities. Criteria are generally the same across classes of drugs. There are 5 main categories of substances: depressants, stimulants, opiates, hallucinogens, and other drugs. Depressants. Depressants include alcohol, sedatives, and anxiolytic drugs. Alcohol acts as a central nervous system depressant. While it influences several neurotransmitter systems, it increases the inhibitory effects of the neurotransmitter GABA. Chronic alcohol use often leads to intoxication and withdrawal, and in extreme cases can contribute to dementia and Wernicke's disease. Alcohol use is highest among Caucasian Americans, and most adults consider themselves light drinkers. Unfortunately, roughly 3 million Americans are alcohol dependent. Sedative, hypnotic, and anxiolytic-related disorders include the use of drugs like barbiturates and benzodiazepines. All of these drugs exert their influence via the GABA neurotransmitter system, and the effects are similar to large doses of alcohol. Stimulants. Stimulants are the most widely consumed class of drugs in the United States. These drugs increase alertness and energy. In fact, you may have ingested a stimulant this morning or are consuming one right now as you complete this module. Caffeine. This stimulant is found in tea, coffee, cola drinks, cocoa products, and energy drinks. Other examples of stimulants include amphetamines, cocaine, and nicotine. Amphetamines specifically stimulate the central nervous system by enhancing the release of norepinephrine and dopamine while blocking reuptake. Cocaine often involves short-lived sensations of elation, vigor and reduced fatigue. While cocaine is highly addictive, the addiction develops slowly. Nicotine is also highly addictive and results in sensations of relaxation, wellness, and pleasure. After only several weeks of daily use, tobacco and nicotine withdrawal can lead to unpleasant symptoms like insomnia, increased appetite, restlessness, anxiety, and irritability. Opiates and opioids. Opiates and opioids are drugs that produce analgesia and euphoria. They are often referred to as analgesics and act as painkillers. Opiates are natural chemicals found in the opium poppy, while opioids are natural and synthetic substances with narcotic effects. Opioids activate the body's natural painkillers and endorphins. Opioids are powerful. Low doses can induce euphoria, drowsiness, and slowed breathing, whereas high doses can result in death. Hallucinogens. Hallucinogens include marijuana and LSD. They change the way the user perceives the world, and they can also produce delusions, paranoia, hallucinations, and altered sensory perception. Marijuana is considered a hallucinogen, and its active chemical is tetrahydrocannabinol, also known as THC. LSD is another common hallucinogenic drug, with effects that tend to be much more intense than marijuana. For LSD and marijuana, withdrawal effects are rare or uncommon. Other drugs of abuse. Other drugs of abuse include inhalants, steroids, and medications. Inhalants like spray paint, gasoline, or nitrous oxide are rapidly absorbed in the body, with effects similar to alcohol intoxication. Anabolic steroids are derived from testosterone and are often used to increase body mass. While the use of anabolic steroids does not produce a high, it can result in long-term mood disturbances and physical problems. Designer drugs like ecstasy and ketamine were originally produced by pharmaceutical companies to target diseases, but were then used for recreational purposes. They can cause drowsiness, pain relief, and dissociative sensations. Next, let's analyze the causes and treatments of substance abuse. Causes. Substance abuse often has a genetic component. Certain genes increase the risk for abuse and the way drugs are metabolized in the body. Drugs also affect the pleasure pathway of the brain and can inhibit neurotransmitters that produce anxiety or negative affect. This is what can initially make drugs so appealing and desirable for users. Using drugs allows individuals to seek a euphoric high or escape from life stressors, tension, and withdrawal. Cognitive factors, like the role of expectancy effects, can lead people to use drugs when they expect positive effects. Cravings can also be triggered by one's mood or cues in the environment. Exposure to drugs is a prerequisite for the use of drugs. This can occur through media, family, and peers. Drug abuse is often viewed in our society as a sign of moral weakness or disease. Treatment. There are many approaches to treating substance-related disorders. Biological treatments include substituting a safe drug with a similar chemical composition as the abused drug. Think nicotine gum and the patch for smokers. Drugs can also be used to block or counteract the positive effects of a substance. Aversive biological treatment makes use of substances extremely unpleasant. Psychosocial treatment approaches include inpatient and outpatient care, community support programs, and incorporating elements of psychotherapy and contingency management. While the treatment of substance-related disorders is often unsuccessful, at least initially, highly motivated individuals do best, and it is important to use a comprehensive approach that considers multiple causal pathways. Personality disorders are enduring and inflexible predispositions that are maladaptive, cause distress, or lead to impairment. They typically begin in childhood, and throughout one's life, comorbidity with other disorders is the rule, not the exception. Unlike the other categories of disorders that have been covered so far, personality disorders are egosyntonic. This means that for individuals with a personality disorder, it often feels consistent with one's identity and does not necessitate treatment. Personality disorders can cause distress for those around the individual with the actual disorder as well. Treatment is often difficult and prognoses are often poor. In the DSM-5, categorical and dimensional models are used to provide diagnoses. Personality disorders have traditionally been assigned as all or nothing categories, and part of that remains in the DSM-5. The new edition also introduces a dimensional component where individuals are rated on the degree to which they exhibit various personality traits. Personality disorders are organized into clusters. Cluster A, odd or eccentric. The odd or eccentric cluster includes paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality disorders. Paranoid personality disorder is defined by pervasive and unjustified mistrust and suspicion. Schizoid personality disorder is marked by a pervasive pattern of detachment from social relationships, limited range of emotions in interpersonal situations. Schizotypal personality disorder is associated with behavior and dress that is odd and unusual, social isolation, being highly suspicious, and magical thinking. Cluster B, dramatic, emotional, erratic. The odd or dramatic, emotional, erratic cluster includes antisocial, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders. Antisocial personality disorder includes a failure to comply with social norms, violation of the rights of others, irresponsible, impulsive, and deceitful behavior, and lack of conscience and empathy. Individuals with this disorder may even be very charming and interpersonally manipulative. Borderline personality disorder is indicated by unstable mood and relationships, impulsivity, fear of abandonment, poor self-image, self-mutilation, and suicidal gestures. Histrionic personality disorder is associated with behavior that is overly dramatic, sensational, and sexually provocative. Impulsive, thinking and emotions are perceived as shallow. Narcissistic personality disorder is associated with exaggerated and unreasonable sense of self-importance, preoccupation with receiving attention, and a lack of sensitivity and compassion for other people. Cluster C, fearful, anxious. The fearful, anxious cluster includes avoidant, dependent, and obsessive-compulsive personality disorders. Avoidant personality disorder is associated with extreme sensitivity to the opinions of others, avoidance of most interpersonal relationships, fearful of rejection, low self-esteem. Dependent personality disorder is demonstrated by reliance on others to make major or minor life decisions, unreasonable fear of abandonment, and clingy and submissive behavior in interpersonal relationships. Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder is indicated by an excessive, rigid fixation on doing things the right way, behavior that is perfectionistic, orderly, and emotionally shallow. However, obsessions and compulsions are rare.